Hey everyone, good morning. It's Monday, April 27th, and a brand new week ahead of us. One of the things I was thinking about a lot about this whole, which everybody's thinking with this isolation, is definitely that loss of connection. And I'm not sure we're counting that cost. We're looking at the health risks of gathering together, and there definitely are health risks when we gather together. But there are also some health risks when we're isolated from each other, and how important it is that we find ways to connect and encourage and be, even with the Zoom or FaceTime or whatever we can, or over the fence, to have face-to-face conversations with each other. We still need to build friendship. And today I want to interview my best friend from Washington State. His name is Rick Thiessen. He was up here last October or November, in November, and did some teaching on apologetics and then preached in our service. And Rick and I have been friends for a long, long time. And so we want to talk a little bit about that, how important friendship is, and also to hear kind of what's going on with him. He's down in Washington State, and just his perspective on the coronavirus stateside. So let's go to Rick now. Hey, good morning, Rick. How are you doing?
Good morning, Tim. Doing fine here in lockdown, trying to sparingly use the toilet paper down here in Washington State.
Nice, nice. Now, is it so? We're metric. So does that mean we get more toilet paper per roll or less per roll than you guys do in America?
Oh, yeah, that's the problem. I'm not sure. All I know is that, man, I used to spin that thing like Wheel of Fortune, but now I turn it like I'm cracking a safe.
There's an episode on The Office where they were uh, um, Dwight was unplying a two-ply toilet paper to turn it to one-ply. They had a tool that separated it. Put the one-ply back on. Yeah, so everybody
Need
just
that. We could use that tool these days.
one-ply. Oh man, so you guys, you're down there in Washington State. You are in Arlington, Washington,
Yes.
Marysville, Washington, that kind of area, just north of Seattle. And for a while there, you guys were like kind of like ground zero of this pandemic. Is that right?
Yeah, we were. We were like the tip of the spear. We think the first U.S. case was here, actually, not just in Washington, but in Snohomish County, where we are,
Wow.
and probably patient zero was in a nursing home, and then it spread from there. We have a lot of connections with our business here. We have Nintendo and we have Boeing and lots of subsidiaries tied to the Asian markets. So all that travel is a big time deal here on the West Coast. So likely that's why we were first in line.
Yeah. And so I mean, your people like our people, we're all experiencing, there's a sense of for sure unknown, for some a sense of fear and um, unrootedness. And what kind of things have you been doing, or how has God been ministering to you as a congregation and you as an individual?
Well, I think that what's been fascinating is to find out how resilient the church is,
Mm,
and how they have rallied to the moment. I honestly, maybe I shouldn't say this out loud, but there's an impression, I think, amongst the ministerial community that the Western church is a bit soft, and maybe for good reason. You do any kind of traveling to our persecuted brothers and sisters around the world, and you think, oh my goodness, I mean, if anything hard ever happened to here, man, I mean, it would empty the pews. Meanwhile, our brothers and sisters in China, in Pakistan, in closed countries are meeting a threat of their lives. And Tim, I don't know about you, I've been a little bit of a delightful surprise that the church seems to be rallying. We're seeing lots of eyeballs on a weekly prayer night that I would have thought wouldn't attract more than two people in a normal
yeah,
situation.
yeah.
I'm surprised, delightfully, I guess, surprised by the churches rallying to the moment, ready to do hard things.
That is very cool. And you're right, the church is stepping up, right? And we're looking for ways that we can help and looking for ways we can impact our neighbors. Um,
Yep.
so you personally, as a leader, as a human, as a Christ follower, what's God been saying to you these days to keep you going?
Well, what is the saying? Don't pray for an easy life. Pray to live in interesting times.
Mm.
Isn't there a line like that? Well, here we are.
There is. I'm saying it's you. You just quoted it. So
Okay. Well, mission, prayer answered. We are living in interesting times. We're living in a time we will tell our children or our grandchildren. I couldn't help but tie this in to Joel. If you remember, Joel has the opening line: "Tell it to your children and to their children, and them and their children to the next generation."
Mm,
The plague, and for them, of course, not a COVID-19, but a plague of locusts. And it was, he said, what should this call us to do? And
mm,
and the end of that is call out to God. And I just have thought more and more to myself how utterly appropriate it is that the people of God and myself as specifically as an individual Jesus follower, that this is a moment to call out to God. And so it's been a tremendous moment of, I guess, personally taking stock and there, we all have things to repent of. And I just, I know that there's lots of talk theologically about how, we don't want to tie any specific, judgment of God thing on this, but do the people of God think like that? I mean, Jesus, was asked about the towers that fell on people and said, well, do you think that it fell on them because they're worse sinners than anybody else? And judgment is ready to happen to all of you, and it will overtake everyone unless you repent.
mm.
And it feels like there's always the dangerous sword of natural evil that's in its sheath, ready to come out. And when it comes out, it's there. If you read the prophets, it's there to call us to reflect, to take stock, to turn, to change our mind, to repent.
Yeah,
And that's what it's doing for me these days.
oh, that's good. We were talking earlier, and you had mentioned something about a loneliness pandemic prior to COVID-19. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Well, I think that, if we've been paying attention, Gen Z, the first truly fully digital generation, the generation has to learn to be able to converse and do relationship offline, whereas our generation, Tim, we have to learn how to do it online. That's an acquired skill for us. That generation, the metrics on their mental health and stuff like that are showing the loneliest generation. So we already had a loneliness pandemic. Then onto the loneliness pandemic, we imposed a universal international stay-at-home order
Mm,
and said, now you must, be even more lonely. It was sort of like forced loneliness, and obviously
yeah,
for good reasons, to save lives. But nevertheless, to force more loneliness onto the loneliness generation is in some sense frightening when
yeah,
you think about what may be the costs of this coming out of it. But I also think then, Tim, opportunity, because it may be that in an unprecedented ways, the community of Jesus will be there to meet needs for a generation that will be absolutely um, hungry for it.
yeah. Well, and I've been finding that too. I find myself lonely, right? And I know that for those of us who weren't in a loneliness generation before or pandemic before, are finding it now. And, that's why I'm so grateful for people like you, Rick. You've been just a dear friend of mine for so many years. How many years?
Uh,
1985,
30,
I believe. So
35.
35? Yeah,
Yeah.
35 years. And it's times like this where we need to lean into these friendships. So even this interview is a blessing in my heart, and we text back and forth and all that kind of stuff. But um, for some people it's hard. Friendships are hard to get significant relationships. What are some key components, do you think, for people to build strong relationships?
Well, I think number one, what you and I found, Tim, was that vulnerability breeds vulnerability. That
Yep.
somebody takes a trust risk in any friendship, or it doesn't go into what I would call great friendship. Um, and so, what does it take? You take a trust risk. I'm going to entrust this person with my story, with some part of my heart, and to do that, I have to be willing to be vulnerable. And when you think about the word vulnerable, who wants to be vulnerable? Vulnerable, if you actually look up the clinical definition, is exposed to harm,
Oh,
exposed to harm, or
nice.
some kind of
It's
that's
so
what
true.
vulnerable means. What's that?
It's so true. Yeah.
Yeah. So who wants to be vulnerable for 5 seconds? But if there's a payout, and there is in friendship, then you take trust risks. And boy, we found that there, when I could share the darkest part of myself with you, Tim, when I was at the cusp of probably losing my ministry, at the edge of moral failure, um, that was when I realized that you wouldn't shame me, that the vulnerability I was risking was that I would be shamed, that I would be rejected, that I would be demoted. And instead, what I found was it was met with commensurate transparency.
Mm.
And then trust just, could explode in an environment like that.
It could, yeah. And and I loved it that I could share sort of my, yeah, same thing, my worst stories with you and not be condemned, and share my best stories with you and not feel like I'm bragging, because you
Right.
totally wanted to sell, you wanted to hear, tell me what's great in your life. And I could, well, this is actually really great. And you're like, I know you're so great at that. And I love that we can celebrate each other. And I think people need to be doing that these days. We need this more than ever, right? And it's easy to just sort of say, "Hey, how's it going? You hanging in there?" We get our new set of questions with every new situation we find ourselves in, right? It's less about, "Hey, how's the weather?" and it's more like, "Hey, how's COVID-19 pandemic dealing with you?" Right? And those are good questions, but to really lean into just being honest and sharing what's really going on. Share your heart, share your struggles and your joys. That we find ourselves, then we're heard. Anyway, that's what I think.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think what people are finding is they're just too desperate to hide that stuff anymore. And if there's a good thing that comes out of bad things, which is God's specialty, by the way, to pull good things out of bad things, then that is one of them. That in the middle of crisis, there are people who have been holed up behind a wall of individualism, a wall of self sufficiency that is finally just too crumbling for us to pretend that it can be maintained, can be erected any longer.
Yeah.
And so we have people, for example, we were doing Generosity Multiplied, which is a just a need meeting thing where we're going around encouraging people who have physical needs or prayer needs or social needs to just raise their hand, submit a request on a website, and someone will talk to you. And so many of those people say, I never do this. I would never ask for help. I never have been in a situation where, but I just, and they found that the crisis has pressed them in to the thing that should be so natural for us all the time, which is we need each other.
Yeah.
Right? We need each other. And I think that so many people are worried about becoming a burden, that they're worried about a one-way transference of resources. And yes, that you want to avoid that. It's too paternal sometimes when you're the only one receiving from someone else. But in times like this, people are ready to help. It's like, let your need be known. And
Yeah.
when it's known, then I can join you there. I can help you, and I know that you'll be there to help me. And so we're finding this reciprocity thing going around the church. It's like, hey, so and so has extra school supplies for the homeschooling that's going on. Well,
Yeah.
so and so is got like extra resources. They got this check that's coming from the American government. They're retirees. They got fixed income. They don't need it. They're going to donate it to the extra food that's going on. This beautiful synergy of community is happening when people's
Mhm.
need becomes known, and they can
Yeah.
kind of let the facade of I got it all together come down.
Right. And that's practically, and that's also mentally and emotionally, right? The same thing. Like I was sharing with
Yes.
you earlier, that I have my struggles, that there's, 20% of the time where I'm just having a hard go. And yeah, just hearing you understand that and accept that and share your own heart with that just frees me up. Then it doesn't mean I have to keep hiding that part of me that I'm struggling. It means that when I expose it, then we can share that load together.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like what are some going to be the psychic costs of this? I feel useless. I feel like I'm no longer a good provider. I feel like I don't know my place anymore. Those are things where those are as much of a need as hey, the groceries aren't going to come in this
Yeah.
month. So we got to be able to press into our community, press into those relationships that God's placed in and around us and again, be willing to take the risk to expose that part of ourselves and say, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this thing. This is putting new stresses on my marriage, or all that stuff. um, we have to be willing to do it, and maybe, Tim, through venues like this, where we're looking at each other through a computer screen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wish we were on a golf course. And I think we could do it with social distancing because you kind of go down the middle and I'm off into the woods all the time. So we would easily have our 6 feet of distance, right?
That is such a lie. So yeah, it's exactly the opposite. I'd be fishing for my ball out of the woods the whole time. We would never come within 6 feet of each other, except on the green where you would have been waiting for me for 10 minutes.
Whatever. Hey, I love you so much, Rick. I wish we could hang out physically, but this is as close as we're going to get today. So thanks
Love
for
you
your
too,
time.
man.
I know you got lots of work to do down there, and I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Blessings on ACC.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Well, I hope you have good people in your life that you're able to connect to. And don't take that for granted. Lean into that today. Call someone up, FaceTime somebody, Zoom somebody, find a way to connect and just see how they're doing really. And be honest with how you're really doing. If your small group hasn't been meeting, I would encourage you to do a Zoom meeting. Connect up, touch base, see how each other are doing. If you are doing that, great. Keep going. And if you feel like you'd like to be involved in some kind of connection, some kind of virtual small group, please let us know. We would love to get you connected up with that. Jim would love to be able to find a way to get you connected to a virtual small group. Yeah, it's so important that in this time of isolation, we are still building relationships, building into each other. Ask good questions, deep questions. Sure, it's important to find out how people are doing with COVID-19. That's really good in a general sense. But find out how people are doing in a more specific sense. What are they feeling, particularly fearful about? Are they feeling insecure? Are they feeling unmoored, from or unattached, and they're kind of floating? And it'd be good to find that out, and then be an encouragement. Just listen with gracious ears, and be honest with yourself as you share with them. Be honest too. There's great benefit in that, my friends. Great benefit. Well, I hope you have a great week, and God be with you.